Welcome back to the Tap and Go, where we tap into curious minds and go and apply the lessons we learn. Today, I have the superwoman herself, Deborah Wills, who's currently with Bristol Bears and has an amazing story. So she's going to share some pretty cool golden nuggets for us today. Deborah, welcome to the Tap and Go.
Thank you, Waz. Thank you.
So, Deborah, we're going to jump straight into our questions. I am curious to learn more about your mindset. 17 weeks post-pregnancy, you were back onto the rugby field. How did you do it? Tell us more. What was the mindset like?
Mindset's an interesting one. So I think the whole way through my pregnancy, I was just set on returning. I have a very good friend, Holly Aitchison, and she was also, I think, just like pushing me to return in a really supportive friendship way. But I think she was excited by the idea of me returning. My family were really supportive, my husband. And I just really wanted to, I think I wanted to demonstrate that you can return from having a baby and you can still be just as good, if not better, than you were before you had a baby, before you got pregnant. And for me, that was really important because I don't see rugby as something where and sport where women need to stop and then retire and then have children. I think you can have it all. And I guess from my time in sevens, I would look at the men's program and they all had their kids on their days off and they'd meet up and they would go home to their families. And I think they just had such a nice balance of what they wanted to achieve professionally and then also their personal lives. And I wanted that. And I just thought, why can't I have it? Of course I can have it. So we decided to start a family and I managed my whole pregnancy and returned myself. And I just decided that I was going to do it. I was going to train all through my pregnancy. I was going to listen to my body. I did a lot of research and I've got some qualifications in personal training and such and just gym management experience. So I'm always in that industry. So I felt confident to be able to get my body to where I needed it to be, and then to be able to return it as well. And yeah, I was just set on playing. I was set on showing people you don't have to be professional as well. I think that was really important in the women's game. We have what we call a professional league, but it's not professional. It's professional for a very small percentage of the game, which is the international 15s players from various countries. But the rest, we're not professional. So obviously, we're having to do the rugby alongside jobs and everything like that. And so I wanted to demonstrate that you don't have to just be in a professional, fully professional environment where it's your job and that's your 9 to 5 to be able to return. You can return anyway, and you can still be as strong, as powerful, as fast, and as sort of menacing. And I think I achieved it. So yeah, it was. I think it was just almost stubbornness. Like why not? Why can't I? Dare me. Let's go.
Oh, no, I absolutely love that. And yeah, probably you need that nail on the head, knowing you really well. That stubbornness definitely is definitely a driving force. But I love how you highlighted you had a clear vision there, in terms of what you wanted to achieve, how you sort of manage your own way forward. So you had a real clear understanding of your own body and how you feel and all those driving forces that you need to be able to achieve that goal. And then probably the most important thing there that you highlighted, your friends, your family, so that community, that network community, I think it's vitally important. So for any sort of young player listening, is building that network of people around you that can motivate you and push you forward. Having that clear understanding of how you feel as an individual athlete, and a clear goal. I think that's probably a real good reflection of yourself as an individual athlete based on what I've seen over the years. So no, that's fantastic. And then sort of on the daily process that you sort of uncovered, how did you sort of deal with those tough moments and tough days, when the confidence was probably low, or knowing your athletic ability the stuff that you can sort of achieve, and perhaps during that process you couldn't do those things. How did you manage that?
So I think going back to the friends and family thing, I'm a firm believer in believe something for someone until they can believe it for themselves. And so there would be points, obviously, where my confidence would dip and I couldn't see my end goal as clearly, or I didn't have quite as, steadfast belief in it. And then I would speak to my friends, my family, I would speak to Holly, I'd speak to my husband, I would speak to other athletes, and they would believe it for me, and they would see it, I guess, from more of a standoff perspective and be able to say, wow, like what you've done today is way more than you did a week ago, or, and put it into perspective. So I always think everything is, you can view as a mountain. Never ever look up. Don't look up. Just look at the step in front of you. And that was really important for me. And I think especially throughout pregnancy, your body's changing so much and you really can't achieve things that can seem really basic. Like, I mean, to the point where you can't put your socks on and shoes on because you've got a massive baby bump. But I think it taught me to slow down, to have a bit of patience, and to recognize what I could achieve. And I am a firm believer in focusing on what I can achieve in any rehab process. I don't want you to tell me what I can't do. I don't want to hear it because I probably know it because I know my own body. I want you to tell me exactly what I can do and encourage me to do that to the best of my ability. And so I'd work everything around what I can do. And eventually, over time, what you can do gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you return to the fullness of the athlete you are. And so it is pushing into that, knowing and setting yourself little daily goals. I knew I was going to be tired. Who isn't tired as a new parent? Like, who is not tired? But you can be tired and you can be sat on the sofa watching a series, or you can be tired doing your Pilates on the floor, or you can be tired in the gym where at least you've got some space from the baby and from the house and you've got out and about. You choose where you're going to be tired and you choose your hard and you choose your discipline at the end of the day. Because I think motivation will get you going, but then it is your discipline that allows you to continue and ultimately make you successful. And you have to choose your hard.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. I always say discipline now, freedom later. And then yeah, I love it just how you took responsibility for your own actions and just got on with it. So that's a strong mindset there. Um, and then sort of, can you sort of take us back to that moment where you first jump onto the grass for Worcester Warriors, like the first time you went back? How did it feel like in that process, getting back into the changing room and then the pre-game huddle, knowing there's a third person part of the family now? How did you sort of feel?
The whole thing was mental. I think because also Worcester was a new club for me. So you've got all of that, sort of all the layers of that on top. So you're a bit nervous trying to make teammates, trying to suss out a new environment, like actually suss out changing rooms and stuff like that. New relationships with coaching staff and support staff. So all of a sudden you've been in a bit of a bubble where you've always got your support people there. So like my husband, my friends, I was able to maintain that environment and make sure it was how I wanted it. And then I went back into club where I can't control any of that environment. And so it was quite overwhelming, but I also believe in, it sounds ridiculous, but 3 seconds of courage. I give myself 3 seconds of courage for everything. So if I'm getting a bit nervous, I try and recognize the emotion, recognize like where it could stem from really quickly. But then I breathe and I go 1, 2, 3, and you walk into the room anyway, and you walk into the changing room and you get your boots and whatever else. But overall, I think I was just excited. Like I knew I'd done the work. I rocked up to Worcester 6 weeks postpartum, and I think that was probably the hardest because I was a bit like, I've been running, I've been lifting, but I'm here faster than I thought I would be. I'm here with a new group of girls, and I was introduced as, this is Deborah Fleming. And I was like, oh, Deborah Wills now. Deborah Fleming, she's had a baby 6 weeks ago. And everybody was a bit like, what are you doing here? And I was a bit like, I don't know. But yeah, I knew I'd done the work. I knew I'd done all my lifting sessions. I knew I'd done all my running sessions. I'd done all my skills sessions. I'd done a pre-season. So I knew I was ready. And yeah, it was against Chiefs, our first game. We won it. I actually got back of the match. And I put in an absolute shift and I played 80 minutes and I was exhausted at the end. But there's the sense of accomplishment. For I'd step back on the field, but then afterwards I went over to my new little family, and we were there on the field together, and it was the start of a really amazing journey where my son now steps on the field after every single game, and now he's got to the point where he's got a ball. And he's running around and he's making people from the opposition play with him, as well as my teammates, as well as myself. And it's just really lovely, like, to be able to, I guess, demonstrate all of that to him as well. Like, he's ball crazy. He loves running. He loves activity. He doesn't sit down. And it's because he comes to the field with me for my sessions. He's used to being around like a team sport. We go to the field and we do kicking and we practice our catching and things like that. And I love it. And I'm so glad that I did go through it all.
No, yeah, brilliant. I think it goes back to what you just said a minute ago. You were sort of clear on that goal, and then all celebrating all those small little steps along the journey gave you that confidence, because you knew you did all the hard work. And then I suppose the greatest reward and joy you have now is sharing these special moments with the little man. So no, that's absolutely brilliant, and I think there's some real valuable insight in there for any young person. Now into Olympic space, the big weekend coming up for the GB men. The women's team has just been announced recently, or yesterday or today actually. Take us back 4 years ago, when you experienced to represent Great Britain at an Olympics. Tell us a little bit about that experience, or what's the sort of biggest things you've taken away from that experience?
I think for me, that getting selected for the Olympics was a childhood dream that I'd had. And for me, again, I think it backs up the hard work. So I think I, from a young age, grabbed hold of the concept of just working really hard and being really disciplined. So if I had a goal and I wanted to achieve it, I would just work really, really hard, because I figured if I worked really, really hard and I didn't make it, at least I worked really hard and I tried. And I know that if I failed, it was nothing I could have done, because I did everything. And I think for me, the getting selected for the Olympics was almost like a well done to my younger self. For having that dream and for working hard all the way through my teenage years, like my early 20s, and then how that progressed into going into England Sevens and eventually becoming a part of Great Britain, and then finally the Olympic team, and just how important hard work is. And I think Tokyo 21 was a very different Olympics, obviously, because of COVID. And so it made the experience, we lost that family side of it, which I think for me is super important. And maybe one of the things that meant straight after it, I was like, let's have a family, because we were so isolated and you weren't celebrating things with your family because they weren't allowed to be there. But it was an honor to be selected. I think I do find it hard to discuss, just because I'm so performance minded that not coming away with a medal for me almost makes it something that I'm like, oh, was that a positive experience? But the journey is really important. But obviously, I do love an outcome as well. And so I would have, for me to look back on that time more favourably, I guess, I would need to come away with a medal because of how hard we did work, and because it was achievable for us. But we fell short in the end. And I think it was on us what we could have done better. But yeah, getting selected and being a part of multi-sport games is always incredible. Like Commonwealth Games in 2018, that was an amazing event. And obviously pre-COVID, so we had friends and family there. And that is just, I think, the thing with sport and the thing with life is you're sharing it with family and friends. And that's the important bit. You can do all the things on your own and they will not mean anything unless you are able to share it with the people you love, because ultimately it's all about relationships. And I think for the mental health of athletes and coaches, it's being able to recognize that, yes, we're working towards whatever the targets are, whatever the big games, big tournaments, big challenges are, we're working really hard towards them. But you have to be able to recognize that in life, that isn't the most important thing. It is a wonderful thing, and it is a wonderful thing to be shared, and that makes it better. But also, when you're alongside your family and friends, you have the support you need for your emotional well-being and your mental well-being. And I think that's ultimately what makes people successful and happy. I think you can look at a lot of athletes who maybe could achieve a lot. Are they happy? And for me, that's the most important thing to look at, because it ultimately becomes the driving force for when times are harder. Through if you don't get the medal, if you do pick up the injury, or if you don't get selected, the only other thing that stays completely stable and the same is your support network and the relationships that you sort of create outside of that area.
No, that's really great insight there. And I suppose you might not have the physical medal, but I suppose the medal that you will have is the ability to say that you are an Olympian, you've been to the Olympic Games, and you can share that journey with a lot of young people and with a lot of people actually, in terms of the sacrifices you had to give to get yourself to that stage. So, no, I think it's fascinating. And then last question. Look, we live in a complex world with loads of different challenges that we face on a daily basis at the moment. If you can give any piece of advice to a young rugby player, what would that piece of advice be?
Work hard and don't be disheartened. Never ever lose hope. I think you need to work really hard, because then you know you've worked really hard. If you don't get selected at that point in time, it's okay, because you did everything you can, but always leave a little gap for some hope as well, because that will keep you going for working hard for maybe the next team selection or whatever it is. So I think work really hard, but also try and keep hope, and if you can, have like a joy and enjoy the journey. And I think that is really difficult. It's something I've struggled with my whole career, is journeys. But ultimately, everything is a journey, and you spend more time on the journey than you do whatever the destination, because we're always changing our destination as sports people. It could be a World Cup one year, it could be a Commonwealth another year, and then it could be a Euros the following year. It's always changing. So I think work really hard, and don't be afraid to have some harsh feedback and then go work really hard again. Hard work beats everything. It really does.
Hard work always beats everything. And I love the fact that you said leave a little bit of hope, or a little gap there for hope. And then, if you put the work in, it makes that hope a little bit more exciting, doesn't it? And then plus, I love the fact that you said there earlier, I think for any player coach, that sort of 3 seconds of courage, I think that's a brilliant little tool there to just use it as a strategy for when things get tough, or when things perhaps get uncomfortable, or just to take a moment to yourself where you can use that strategy as that 3 seconds of courage. I think I'll be stealing that one anyway.
Do it.
Deborah Wells, the superwoman. Love what you've achieved with your career so far, and thank you for jumping on the tap and go. And it's like I said, it's always a privilege for me, and I'm grateful I shared a little bit of your rugby journey with you. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.